Hello, everyone. Welcome to once again the return of Bitcoin Brief with your host, Tone Vase. I am coming to you live from CC Forum in London, where earlier today I was on stage with Nouriel Roubini, Brock Pierce, Bobby Lee, and the infamous fake Satoshi himself, Craig Wright. And we haven't done one of these news shows in a while, and Jimmy was available, and I found a spot. So here we go. Jimmy, welcome back. It's been a while. What's new in your world?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm working on a new seminar and stuff, but I really want to get the word out about these scholarships that I have from OKCoin. I have some spots available for the San Francisco seminar, November 5th and 6th. And if you are interested, please apply. I think Tone will have that in the show notes at some point.
Yeah, and also, hey, save a few scholarships for February when you come and do your workshop at Unconfiscatable.
Yeah, I mean, I may have to. We'll see.
Yeah, so we'll see Jimmy back there again. We have the Bali event coming up this week, and after that, all focus will be on Unconfiscatable as it goes on sale sometime next week. All right, Jimmy, how are you? We're gonna have a little bit of audience here today. But let's go. You know what? Let's go straight to the stories. And in fact, I think the first story is, of course, me wearing the T-shirt that I'm wearing right now that says "We are all Satoshi except for Craig Wright." As I was sitting next to Craig Wright on stage, and I don't know who took this picture, but it's absolutely epic. I don't know who took it. I don't know who posted some probably Telegram group. And Jameson Lobb just sends a tweet without any commentary, and it's been really moving through Twitter. It's really awesome. Thanks, Jameson. But this was great. I loved it actually.
Toad, that panel had to have like more scammers per square inch than any other panel that I've seen. I mean, who was on it? Brock Pierce, Craig Wright, Bobby Lee. Who else was on there?
Nouriel Roubini.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well,
thankfully you represent it, so yeah, there you go. But that's a scammers murderers row there.
But speaking of Bobby Lee, actually, I'm gonna cut the camera for a second. So Bobby gave me one of his new hardware wallets. I hope that's not a private key that I'm showing you. I believe the private key is beneath the hologram, and he's getting a lot of crap on Twitter and in the big.
Yeah, I mean, he's keeping the private key. What the hell? Like that's not custodial at all. It's the stupidest product I've ever heard. But I mean, whatever. So, he's gonna go and try to make it user friendly or something.
But yeah, but I believe that's a public key. I don't know if that's a good idea for you to put on camera, but it's right there. Actually, let me do this. I gotta switch. Boom, right there. There you guys go. So that's one of Bobby's wallets. Now, I didn't really have time to get into a big conversation about how the hell is he putting the private key on one of these things, but I am gonna bring him on the show, and we're gonna ask him questions, and he will explain on a future on the record as to how this works and why he feels the backlash he's getting is unwarranted. And speaking of guests on the record, before we start the show, I will have Kim.com on this very podcast Thursday. So the day after tomorrow, come here. It will be, I think, around 11 a.m. UK time. I don't know what the hell it is in New York. And it will be.
It's about 6 hours before that, 5 a.m. You're gonna really do a podcast at 5 a.m.
I have to, man, because he's in New Zealand, right? So it's like evening for him. But yes, I will have Kim.com on this podcast. But before you guys watch my interview with Kim.com, you have to go over to Ivan on Tech, because he just interviewed Kim.com the other day. I watched it on my flight to London. And because I don't want to ask the same questions. So whatever Ivan on Tech was asking Kim.com, I don't plan to repeat those questions. and he asked him a lot about, mega uploads and his current case against the U.S. government and all that stuff. And I'm gonna go right into the crypto stuff because there's no reason for me to repeat the same stuff. All right. Anyway, enough background. Let's go to the news. Back to the news. Oh, by the way, on this panel, when the video comes out, and it should be out soon, it wasn't live streamed, but it was recorded. Bobby Lee really stumped Nouriel Rubini. It was bad. Like Bobby Lee, I give a little clap. I give a clap. Wasn't holding a speaker in my hand because I forgot my headphones. Bobby Lee did a great job in debating Nouriel Rubini, and it didn't really make much sense to have Craig Wright on that panel because the panel wasn't about crypto. The panel was about money. The panel was about like the financial system, the upcoming crash, monetary policy. So it was mostly Bobby Lee and a little bit myself, like debating Nouriel. And I tried to, make fun of Craig Wright as much as I could, but it was interesting. But my solo tomorrow will be good. All right, let's get to the stories. So we got to start off with one of our writers that we, I guess, used to respect a little bit more, but I had no idea. But lately, he seems to be writing some questionable things, especially by Jimmy and especially Giacomo, as Giacomo gave Kyle Torpey a little piece of his mind. And he wrote an article titled, "The New Bitcoin and Cryptocurrency Exchange Can't Be Hacked," and talks about some kind of an exchange on top of Ethereum and on top of EOS. Jimmy, I skimmed through this article. What the hell is going on here?
I really do not understand where Kyle is going with this. I mean, I've respected him as a writer for a very long time, but between this article and the previous one where he talked about how Ethereum surpassed Bitcoin in this one key metric, and sort of like he had a little bit of a caveat at the end saying fees aren't necessarily a good thing and all that. Yeah, that's the article. But those two articles to me, I don't know what's going on. There's a lot of speculation. He's like kind of turning Kevin Pham on us or something like that. But I have no idea what's going on and why he's writing these articles. But I mean, he seems to be doubling down. And I've said this before, like pride is the biggest cause of people losing their credibility. I mean, it's one thing to, say something that's wrong and then apologize later, but it's another just to sort of double down and sort of stand your ground on something that doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is why all those SegWit 2X people are still kind of in the doghouse, except for the one person that apologized, and that was Wednesday. So, it's kind of a crazy situation, and I don't understand where he's going with this. First of all, I probably should have mentioned this first, but there are no exchanges that can't be hacked. I mean, every exchange has some central point, and that if you can manipulate that in some way, you could cheat some people out of some money by deceiving them or doing something. I suspect he means like a very specific type of hacking that it's immune to, which might be true. But I mean, regardless, what's going on, Kyle? Like, I think all of us in Bitcoin are kind of surprised at this turn of events and what you're doing. And you're obviously free to write whatever you want, but I mean, you're starting to lose your credibility here.
Well, I heard this nonsense when I said that the DAO was gonna cause you to lose all of your Ethereum, and people made fun of me saying the DAO can't be hacked. And then within a week, the DAO was drained. And there's infamous videos of me like laughing before, during, and after as people were getting their Ethereum hacked.
Yeah, and this is kind of what happens sometimes with people. I honestly am like kind of dumbfounded, kind of like all those people that went over to BSV. I have no idea what got into their head. I mean, they all were making, or some, they were at least making some sense before, but then they go over to the BSV side and they just sort of go crazy. They don't make any sense anymore and all that other stuff. Yeah, I mean, like you could kind of tell in some of the tweets and replies from Kyle that he's performing some mental gymnastics to keep, like consistent with his article or whatever. And this is this is a trap a lot of writers fall into, which is that, I stand by everything that I've written and that sort of thing. It's really more an expression of pride or ego than actually about, what they wrote. And yeah, I mean, I honestly, Kyle, if you just apologize, I think everything would be fine and, renounce the articles. But I suspect that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and Giacomo was really going at it over on Twitter. And I was hoping Giacomo would join us on this podcast. But yeah, I don't see him. Okay, so let's move on. Actually, let's leave that for last. Let's move on to Libra. So apparently a congressman was on the Noted podcast. The Noted podcast is one of the few podcasts that I recommend people listen to learn about Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto, and all the rest. And Pierre Richard and Michael Goldstein had a congressman on. It was a Republican congressman, Warren Davidson, and he suggested Facebook should just use Bitcoin, which actually made sense because there was what Libra was trying to do is completely unnecessary. I mean, if you're gonna have a private currency, just come up with use your own currency. And but they decided to have some kind of a basket, and we don't even know what was going to be in the basket. Libra, of course, can still put Bitcoin into the basket along with fiat currencies and God knows what else. But he's suggesting just use Bitcoin. And what do you think about this?
Well, I mean, first of all, listen to that podcast if you haven't. Warren Davidson is from the 8th District of Ohio. Went into Congress in 2016, but he really gets Bitcoin. He's the one that, that during, I think, the Libra hearings, he entered the word shitcoin into the congressional lexicon.
That was him.
Yeah. This is the guy. And if you listen to the podcast, it's very clear he understands what Bitcoin is and what gives it value and all this other stuff. So I encourage everybody to go listen to that podcast. But also, this gave me some insight into how you kind of have to play the whole game and so on. He's arguing here about Libra, but his like he sees things from kind of a different perspective as sort of somebody that's trying to give us more freedom and stuff like that. I would love to see somebody like him, more people like him in Congress, because he's trying to sort of like loose us from the shackles of government regulation rather than sort of like bind us more to it. And what he says here is absolutely makes sense, which is, Libra is its own currency. They're making yet another fiat coin or some stable coin or some SDR or something like that. This is this is the right way to approach it, which is to have Bitcoin on Facebook instead. And that way it's kind of unstoppable and they become sort of an on-ramp or off-ramp or, a place to use Bitcoin for goods and services or whatever. There's a lot of different ways in which they could have done this that would have been a lot better and come with much less regulatory scrutiny. And that's, I think, basically what he's saying is give your users more freedom instead of locking them in further into your platform, which is what they seem to be doing. And that seems to be his perspective on things.
All right, no, that's a good thing. I really don't have anything else to add other than, at least some people in Congress understand what the hell Bitcoin is. And that's always been what I wanted. I wanted people to understand what Bitcoin is. And when they think that, Ethereum is not a security because they think it's officially decentralized, that's insane. Ethereum is not decentralized at all. If you're going to say it's not a security, at least have a legitimate reason for saying why it's not a security. Same thing with EOS. I mean, I haven't had time to cover those topics on the law show because we haven't had one in a while. But same thing with the law show. They said that EOS is not a security, which is totally ridiculous. Of course, it's a security. It's just beyond obvious to me, but the SEC disagrees. Okay, so we wait for it to technologically implode now instead of just taking them down because the regulators could. All right. Libra, their law, they announced something. So what is this?
Yeah, so basically they had something like 35 founding members. A lot of them dropped out, so they're down to
Most of them quit.
21. But
Yeah, most of them quit because Congress told them to get the hell out.
well, I mean, it's Visa, MasterCard, PayPal. It's everybody that would be sort of like helping people onboard via fiat. I mean, the only ones left that might possibly be able to do that are Coinbase and I don't know, maybe Kiva, maybe PayU, maybe Zappo. I mean, like but Kiva is like a micro lending platform and stuff like that. It's not really a banking relationship, but they've
Hey, they
clearly
have
put some pressure.
Women's World Banking is still there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bank though. That's probably some sort of nonprofit helping women around the world or something. Hey, it's kind of this weird mix of people, and they're trying to see if they could keep going with it. It seems about as ill-fated as Segwit 2X. Funny enough, Wences is on both. Was a part of both things, so I don't know what's going on.
All right, so let's jump over to the mining side of the game. I mean, we did cover recently that Blockstream is getting into the mining game. I had Adam back on the show when I saw him in Romania a couple of days ago, and they're really optimistic about their big mining operation. That they have really good deals, and it's going to be really interesting. And the mining competition is just getting started. Peter Thiel is backing a $200 million valuation of a renewable Bitcoin mining operation out of Texas. So, and we're hearing a lot about operations moving over to Kazakhstan. Mining is just getting more and more decentralized, and more competition is coming in. Now, of course, the nice high price of Bitcoin has a lot to do with it, but the hash rate is going up. And more importantly, the hash rate from scam coins and scammy forks like Bcash and BSV, they're coming over. And, there's not much hash power. I took a look at how much hash power Bitcoin SV has, and it's less than 1% of Bitcoin's hash power. And they actually think they're going to take over Bitcoin's hash power within the next year. That's how delusional they actually are. But yeah, so this is a very good thing. You agree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's in my home state of Texas, so that in itself is awesome. I'd love to see more of that. But yeah, the key thing to this particular article that I find interesting is that they're using renewable energy as a way to supply power to the miners. And this is something that we've been seeing over the last 5 years or so. And it's become sort of a global trend where renewable energy is used as the backbone of a lot of this Bitcoin stuff, in part because the energy, like the miners can actually go to the energy instead of the other way around, which in of itself is really interesting. And that's very useful, especially for, like hydroelectric power or wind power or something like that. A lot of that stuff people don't want in their backyard. Instead, you can bring the miners to them, and that basically makes the energy production liquid, and it allows more of these things to happen, and that in of itself is a great thing. It's in addition to that, it's also securing the Bitcoin network and decentralizing Bitcoin. So it's good for Bitcoin, it's good for renewable energy, it's good for almost everything, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. And I do think that the hunt for Bitcoin hash power will drive lots of innovation into energy and making it renewable and trying to make solar work. I think there's lots of innovation that is going to happen, and lots of thermodynamics and cooling. Like there are lots of innovation is there for the taking, because if you can make Bitcoin mining profitable, you can make a lot of money if you can outpace your competition. So it's great. And initiatives like this bring a lot of jobs to a specific city or county. So the local politicians in that area should be happy to bring Bitcoin mining into their zone. And this is exactly the conversation I had with Adam back. And I said, are you a little concerned about, you're starting your operation in the state of Georgia, and what if the local politicians, frown upon this? I'd love a drink. I love it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I like scoring free alcohol here. Though I really need to come back on my drinking. It's but what did I say? Yeah. So my concern is, what happens if the local politicians don't like you anymore and they shut you down? And his answer was, the local politicians love it. We're bringing jobs to their county. The last thing they want to do is endanger this. So there's going to be a big battle between the local politicians, whose responsibility it is to bring jobs and revenue into a county or a city or a state, versus the federal government that says, no, you can't. This is the whole, marijuana legalization versus criminalization.
Yeah, I suspect that this is going to be something that that we're going to see more of, is the regulatory arbitrage, that opportunities will get bigger as jobs and equipment and technology and just this is what Wyoming is kind of trying to do, right? Is they're making it regulatory. They're creating a regulatory framework that makes it much easier to start Bitcoin businesses there, and that's where a lot of companies seem to want to move. And Wyoming doesn't have that many people, but I think it will pretty soon as a result of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah, Wyoming actually has more cows than people. So
good to know. I need to move there then.
Know that, yeah. Hopefully you will certainly, if you move there, you will help reduce that ratio to parity, I'm sure. Okay, so we have our last article. This is falsifying stock to flow as a model for Bitcoin value. And this is really, really interesting, because the Twitter handle Plan B has made a career out of talking about stock to flow ratio. And this seems to be a pretty technical article. I'm sorry, guys, I'm at a conference. I didn't have a chance to read all of it, but I believe Jimmy has. So give us a little bit of a background here. What's going on?
Well, so there's a lot of ways in which you can determine if a model is accurate or not. And that's essentially what this article is doing. Is the stock to flow model accurate? And this has been sort of the hottest Bitcoin valuation trend in like the last year or so, is Plan B's article about using stock to flow as a way to value Bitcoin. And based on the log graph and stuff like that, it looks very, very accurate. And according to that model, the fair value of Bitcoin after the next halving ends up being somewhere between like $30,000 and $80,000, which would be amazing for anyone that's holding Bitcoin, obviously. The key though is that he's going through it from sort of a statistician, sort of modeling disciplinary way. And several people have said, oh, that model's crap or whatever. And he goes through all of the reasons why it wouldn't work. And he eliminates each one. And basically towards the end, he says, it looks like stock flow. There's no reason to eliminate stock flow based on all of these reasons, which is good news, I think. It basically says, okay, well, stock flow may really be it, right? Like it really may be the reason why Bitcoin price goes up, because it's actually provably scarce, and it continues to be over time, and more scarce over time as well. So it's a really interesting article. I would encourage you guys to read it, and there's going to be some interesting things that happen if the stock flow model proves to be true in the next year. I mean, how the market reacts to it and things like that. That will in of itself be really interesting.
Yeah, and I haven't read this article yet, but I almost have to agree, because something like stock to flow, I mean, I believe that stock to flow raises value, but I don't believe that this metric could be used for short or intermediate term valuations. I think it's a great long-term tool for valuation, but I don't think it's certainly not a trading timing tool. I also don't see the Mayer multiple as a short-term timing tool for trading, but it's a good large-scale metric as to where we could potentially be going in the near future when things get too oversold or too overbought. but just because something is overbought doesn't mean it can't be more overbought. And just because something is oversold doesn't mean it can't be more oversold. So some things are good metrics to keep in mind, and other things can stay irrational for a really long time. I mean, I always go back to the Doug Casey's article from 1981 talking about how a bigger Great Depression is imminent and gold is on the verge of going to $5,000 when it was $500, and it's still barely about $500, right? And he was saying how by 1983, gold will be $5,000, and we're 40 years later, and not 2 years later. So a lot of these metrics can stay irrational longer than your lifespan. So they're not very good timing mechanisms, but I still think there's value in stock to flow.
Yeah, and the key thing, like from that stock flow model, is that the fair value of Bitcoin currently is somewhere around $8,500. So we're actually very close to the fair value model according to stock flow, and you could use just like the data points from 2011 and project out, and it would still be like 8,500 with something like 95% confidence. So the stock flow model is really interesting. This is a very technical sort of criticism of all of the possible drawbacks and stuff like that. So I mean, if you're interested in this sort of stuff, and really we haven't had a good model for valuing Bitcoin other than supply demand stuff that you do, Tone, with trading. But this gives a solid basis on which you can value Bitcoin. And if it turns out to be true, wow, would that be something?
Well, right before we went live, I was talking to you, Jimmy, about how you and I have pretty much exhausted the pool of people in crypto for our workshops. And this is why our workshops are not happening as often and getting a little harder to get people into them. And to me, that says that new people are not entering the market the way they did in 2016, 17, and 18. And this is what is concerning me about the price of Bitcoin. It's not the institutions that drive the price to ridiculous levels. It's usually, the general public. And we don't have that right now. And that's what makes me a little bit concerned about the near-term future of the price of Bitcoin over the next 6 to 9 months.
Well, I would say that usually that's a lagging indicator than a forward-looking indicator. Right now, we're coming off a bear market, so people's mentality is still from like 6 months ago when Bitcoin was at like $3,000. So, in my view, it's gonna get better as price increases. And I know for myself, the best time for me for getting seats at my seminar and stuff was early 2018, and that was after Bitcoin had peaked, obviously. So I suspect that will be true as well. I mean, I didn't really start my seminars until the second half of 2017. I don't think you did either. So based on that, I suspect that going forward, during the next bubble, we'll probably have more. But I mean, who knows? It might not be retail. That's the major driver for this next bubble. I suspect it's going to be institutions and and things like that as Bitcoin becomes more popular.
Yeah, very possible. All right, so have you seen this chart? I just remembered, so I pulled it up. Somebody else made it, but Willie Wu tweeted it out. And this is the red line below the price of Bitcoin is the number of Bitcoin addresses with over 1,000 Bitcoin in them. What do you think about this, Jimmy?
Over 1,000 Bitcoin? Wow.
Right. So this is how many Bitcoin addresses contain 1,000 Bitcoin or more.
Wow. Seems interesting. There's obviously some consolidation going on with minor addresses or something like that. But I mean, most of this chart is probably just new Bitcoin entering the market, especially in like 2010 to 2013 when we had 50 Bitcoins per reward block or whatever. It was a lot. There was a lot more Bitcoin entering the market. So some of that is probably that. The rest of it is, it sounds like, it might be like, it could be big big pools of like 100,000 Bitcoins being split into 1,000 Bitcoin addresses, or it could be going the other way. It's hard to tell because this graph is probably not enough information to draw conclusions from.
Yeah, but I do find it interesting how the number of wallets with 1,000 Bitcoin is approaching an all-time high. And so there's two ways to look at it, right? You can look at it as, large, the Bitcoin is being more distributed, is getting more, decentralized, I guess, around the world, or more distributed into more hands that have 1,000 Bitcoin. But at the same time, if this thing continues to rise, that could be a sign of, hey, the rich are taking all the Bitcoin, right? Like into the future, like you want Bitcoin to be as spread out around the world as possible. You want one Bitcoin to be worth a lot of money so that no one is actually holding 1,000 Bitcoin in their wallet and is holding $1 trillion. I mean, you want wealth to somewhat be distributed. You don't want to force it. You want it to happen naturally. So while this looks like a good thing that Bitcoin is being spread around, at the same time, if my suspicion is that people are leaving the crypto space and they're getting out, and big players are consolidating the Bitcoin. So you got to hodl your Bitcoin. Don't let that rich guy get 1,000 Bitcoin on the cheap.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that might be the case, or it could be just exchanges like doing better security and keeping them in chunks of 1,000 or something like that. There's a lot of different exchanges now.
Yeah, no. It absolutely could be.
Yeah, and this is why I say I don't think this graph necessarily gives us that much information, because we don't know the reason why. And I tweeted earlier this week about how aggregate numbers don't really tell you that much about reality, and this is definitely an aggregate number. I mean, it might say something, but unless we know more about the fundamentals of what's going on, we're not really going to be able to tell.
All right, it's time to promote a little bit. Jimmy, how are the book sales going with the little Bitcoin book and your Bitcoin programming book?
Yeah, we're going to release the audiobook pretty soon, so we're excited about that. And Tone, you can finally listen to it instead of having to read it. But yeah, the sales are doing well. I'm going to have we're working on some translations, Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. They're all coming. Probably some others as well. We have donation addresses for those at thelittlebitcoinbook.com. But yeah, my seminar is going. The next one is going to be in November 5th and 6th, San Francisco. You can apply now. I also have scholarships if you want. If you are interested. That's available. Go check my Twitter. There's a link there. Yeah, I would love to give them out, right? Like I got some money from OKCoin to create new developers for this space. I would love to teach you. Please apply if you are interested.
Add Vegas on February 20 and 21.
Okay, I will do that. I guess by the next time we do this show. How's that?
Perfect. All right. All right, guys. I'm not gonna show too much. Registration for Bali is closed. I am flying out there this Thursday night. I am off to Bali. The new thing on my website is in the on-demand video section. I have added all of Tyler Jenks's webinars. They are up for sale over at tonebase.com webinars. There are currently no conferences, no workshops for sale. I should probably add the Bali one myself, not the Bali one, sorry, the Vegas one myself. I will do it by the time the next show comes. On the calendar side, I am in London now. I am off to Bali. From there, I have Greece. And from there, I probably have Portugal. There's also Singapore, Traders Fair in between. You can check out the calendar there. All right, time for price. Jimmy, you want to stick around or you got to get going?
I think I got to get going. Thanks for having me. This song is done.
All right. Later, Jimmy. All right, guys, we just said goodbye to Jimmy. Oh, wow, I didn't even realize a new week started. And today is like Tuesday or Wednesday or something. It tells you how much I've been paying attention to the price of Bitcoin. But we can take a look at the charts. We don't need to pay attention to the price. Why am I still holding the speaker? I don't need that anymore since Jimmy's not here. And Giacomo was never able to join, unfortunately. Okay. Here's the weekly chart. Let's see what we got. I just got a bunch of messages. Was making sure that we was fine. I also haven't been able to pay attention to your live chat, guys. I'll glance at it now, but let's talk about the price. So this is not a great looking week. Did we just drop? Wait a minute. When the show started, we weren't this low on the price. What's going on? Here's the daily chart. That is not looking good at all. So here's our weekly chart. We had a nice week, but this nice week didn't end very nice. The week had pulled back, and you can see how the body and the shadow are about equal in size. That is not a bullish sign at all. We are now looking at a red 8, and let's see how this week concludes. Next week is going to be the death cross. I have people tweeting at me, if it's not a death cross unless both moving averages are declining. To me, that is nonsense. A death cross, it's irrelevant if both are declining or not. To me, this is a pretty powerful death cross, and it's not looking good. I believe there's also a death cross on a daily chart that took place between the 50 and the 128, and here comes the 50 versus 200. I don't think this one is all that important, but this is not a good sign on the daily chart. Let's go back to the weekly. I know I'm all over the place. This is, the good news is that we can potentially get a 9 next week. And if we get a 9 next week, that could potentially be a stronger bounce in the price. However, I can also see a big drop next week where the 9 candle looks pretty bad. Let me get this out of the way here. You can see here, here's the 9 candle. The 9 candle is usually a buying opportunity, but you don't know how bad that 9 candle can get. If you saw the 9 candle as a buying opportunity in the morning, you could have gotten wrecked. But if you did the 9 buying opportunity, towards the end of the day, and hopefully caught it somewhere near the bottom, it wasn't a great trade to the upside, but at least it didn't wreck you, okay? And right now, you should probably be getting out of this market. To me, this is pretty bearish. We had a price flip 2 days ago, and then the red 2 did not go below the red 1. But earlier today, the red 3 went below the red 2. And that is a short trade. That is a short trade being activated on daily sequential. Now, you have to be careful with the short trade on daily sequential because you are at the tail end of a weekly setup for a 9. Now, once again, the 9 could be extended. So shorting the 9 in the beginning of this week was a disaster. Shorting it at the very end of the week might not have been a profitable trade, but it certainly wasn't a disaster. It's what we call a break-even trade. Shit happens. Okay, be happy about it. Shorting this 9 in the beginning of the day was a great move. Okay, so it really depends on your 9s. On a daily scale, oh, that's the monthly scale. I went the wrong way. On a daily scale, oh, so the BitMax funding rate went negative. That's actually good for the bulls. But the BitMax funding rate could go more negative, so we'll see. The price action, the CMF is positive. So a lot of your metrics are conflicting with the price action. So you got to be careful here. Bitcoin could be a little bit oversold, and if it consolidates a lot longer, it actually has a chance of breaking out eventually. It has to consolidate a lot longer. For now, Bitcoin is working off an oversold condition. But that is a short trade based on daily sequential. That's, rules are rules. I will also add that this green 2 going above a green 1 was a daily buying opportunity based on sequential, but there is resistance at the 200-day moving average. And those that did not respect the 200-day moving average should have learned here and start to respect it some more. If we drop below these lows, Bitcoin can go down and go down quickly. 12-hour chart is consolidating in this range. I told you guys that inside this range, it's neutral. Above the range was bullish, but if it goes back into the range, you're taking the break-even trade off the table if you didn't get out at the top, which I'm sure most people did not. 4-hour chart, not interesting. Yeah, I'm not going to go through these. I'll glance at maybe a shitcoin or two. This is the Ethereum shitcoin. It's hitting a moving average. Let's see if it gets rejected right here. This is the Ethereum dollar shitcoin, and it's not interesting. This is the Litecoin shitcoin, and it looks very, very bearish. Now, if tomorrow or if next week, this insanity goes below this week's low, this thing can go down, and it can go down in a hurry. This looks like a complete and utter disaster. And speaking of disasters, here's one that is another disaster. By the way, from the moment I walked into this conference, all I saw was Roger Ver being a salesman, telling anybody that can listen to download the Bitcoin Cash wallet, and he's going to give them a shitcoin that's going to depreciate in value. So, hey, more power to him, man. The faster he runs out of money, the faster we'll all get put out of our misery. But this is a red 4 going below a red 3 on a weekly scale. This thing is going to go down. It's currently worth 2.6% of a Bitcoin, and I can't wait till this thing finally falls below 2% of a Bitcoin. I'm still waiting for Binance Coin to have a negative return against Bitcoin for the year. Let's see where we are. Unfortunately, it went up. Binance Coin is up 44% against Bitcoin for the year. I guess, fine. You'll believe in useless securities, illegal securities that have no utility, but that's okay. Can't bring, you can trade it, but that token is so scammy. Gold is not looking good. That is a red 6 on a weekly scale. Sitting at a Fibonacci line. It still has some more downside. I'm sure silver is looking bad. No, silver is hanging in there. That's okay. Oil hanging in there. Wow, look at the S&P. Holy shit. Oh my God. Wow. Wow. I was bearish the S&P for 1 day. 1 day. Right here on this red 2 below red 1. And then I became a bull the following day. And then I was concerned here. And oh my God. New all-time highs. Here we come. Donald Trump breaking the U.S. all-time record for the biggest landslide in a re-election campaign. Here we come. And anyone that bought off of the 9s in the equity market for companies did well. I want to go and look at Uber, guys. Wow, am I bullish the S&P 500. Holy shit. I wish I had, I should have allocated my entire 401k into it, but I haven't even opened up my 401k in a while. My IRA, whatever, same thing. Man, you got to be in the market. You've got to be in the S&P 500 market, guys. This is, it's about to take off. Where's Uber? Oh, man, look at Uber go. Nice. I mean, look, this was a tricky situation, right? The 9 marks the low, but you had a price flip. You had a red 2 go below the red 1. It never went below the 9. It's not an easy situation, but this is a green price flip, green 2 above a green 1. Those that held in this trade off the 9 are doing well. And I see this going higher. It looks good. Lyft, how about Lyft? You know, same thing, scary situation. Red 2 below red 1 below the 9. I wouldn't short it, but I certainly wouldn't be long. But here's a green 2 going above a green 1 2 days later, and you're looking at the stock market. Look, you're bullish as hell in the stock market. Oh wait, why am I? Did I screw that up? I did. This should be. Sorry guys. Otherwise this should be ES. I don't want to lose my charts. This is where we should be looking at Uber. And let's go back to Lyft. And it's stuck at a moving average, but it looks like it's going to break it. So that is a very bullish sign for Lyft. So I clearly missed my opportunity to get into Lyft because I wasn't paying attention. I don't like the CMF, but it's very possible Lyft might have bottomed on a 51% correction, which is perfect. You want to buy these IPOs after a 50% correction. It's very likely Lyft has bottomed. But I'm too busy to trade Bitcoin. I'm too busy to trade traditional markets. Unless I quit and stop traveling and stop wearing World Satoshi separate Craig Wright shirts with Craig Wright on stage, unless I stop all of that, it's really impossible for me to pay attention to the markets and enter trades. It's just not feasible. It's the life I've chose for the last couple of years. I want to go and join the socializing and the drinks. That's it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all on the next one. Bye, guys.